So, Greta, you've been following the China trade war for, what is it, 2 years now at this point?
It feels like it's never ending.
Yeah, exactly. We've been seeing all these developments. We've been hearing about all these teases. What exactly did China agree to in this deal?
Well, this deal, it's called a deal on principle between the U.S. and China, and it's about the text of that Phase 1 trade deal. And the biggest thing that China is agreeing to today is agricultural purchases. President Trump has talked about these ag purchases from the U.S., China purchasing from the U.S. For months now, saying that he wants China to purchase $50 billion worth of U.S. agricultural goods, mostly soybeans, from U.S. farmers. China agreeing to ramp up its ag purchases $40 to $50 billion range over the next 2 years. So White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says the Trump administration is confident that is doable. President Trump himself is confident that's doable. China itself thinks it's doable. U.S. Trade Representative's office, though, also says that this deal is addressing some of those, key issues that have been holding up talks as they do try to get a deal. Agriculture, intellectual property, technology theft, financial services, currency and foreign exchange, all of these issues that have been raised by the president as he talks with China. The USTR says all those issues are being addressed in some way in this deal. Now, what the U.S. is giving China in exchange for the regulatory reform and the structural reform in Beijing is a cancellation of tariffs that were set to go into effect this Sunday, December 15th. Right. And that was going to be a 15% increase in tariffs on $156 billion worth of goods. That's not going to go into effect this weekend. The U.S. is going to maintain the 25% tariffs that are already in place on $250 billion worth of goods. But the tariffs that were imposed on $120 billion worth of goods in September will be reduced now to 7.5%. So you're getting a little bit of a tariff rollback from the Trump administration, but still maintaining tariffs on Beijing to be able to continue pressuring them as they look to negotiate a Phase 2 of a trade deal.
And of course, the tariffs on all this is kind of the teeth of the negotiating process, right? That was kind of what was forcing China's hand. China, of course, putting a retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. But this was a big week overall for the Trump administration in regard to trade in particular.
Yeah, for sure.
Earlier in the week, Democrats said that the USMCA would become, they're going to move forward with the vote on the House floor in the near future. Now we have this deal with China, at least Phase 1 coming up. And of course, this all overlaps with the Democrat-led impeachment effort against the president. So these are two very big wins for the administration at a time where this is supposed to be the low for the administration. So what does the timing mean for all of this?
Well, I think for President Trump, this is a way that he can kind of overshadow the impeachment vote and the impeachment vote there in the House. He can say, look what I'm doing for the U.S. Why would you want to impeach a president that's really reforming the trading relationship with foreign trading partners, fixing NAFTA, replacing NAFTA with the USMCA, which Nancy Pelosi herself has said is an infinitely better deal than NAFTA. It's going to totally fix the relationship between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. She, as a Democrat, the House Speaker, is admitting that. She knows that that deal is a big win for Trump, but she also knows that she had to get that deal done even amid the impeachment inquiry, because Democrats were facing a lot of pressure, especially from the president, saying, you're focusing on impeachment, you're not legislating, you're not doing what the U.S. voters put you into Congress to do. So Democrats, he kind of forced their hand to finalize the USMCA agreement and get that moving forward through the House. That's a big win for President Trump. And then the China trade deal is, of course, a huge win for the Trump administration. On the campaign trail in 2016, President Trump, as then candidate Trump, talked all about reforming the trading relationship with China, saying he was going to get it done. Every other president before him has promised to, reform the trade relationship with China. He's the only one that's actually taking these actions and really getting it done. So having this Phase 1 agreement, confirmed by not just the U.S., but also confirmed by China, and USTR saying that it's likely to be signed in January at the ministerial level between trade rep Robert Lighthizer and his Chinese counterpart. This is a huge thing for Trump to say, look, I did this. And heading into 2020, he can definitely say promises made, promises kept as they continue negotiating into Phase 2.
And of course, Speaker Pelosi, too, she wanted to push this off for as long as she could. I think under the hopes that impeachment would be detrimental enough to the Trump administration where they didn't have to give him this win.
Right.
And now they're at a point where impeachment isn't going the way that they thought it would. And so they have to give him these wins early on compared to closer to the election. So I think that's interesting, too. It also kind of alleviates some of the burden for some of the moderate Democrats who can now go back to their home districts and say, we have this deal.
Well, and President Trump has previously said, hey, we're going to, do phase one and we'll wait until after the 2020 election to do phase two. But today he says, hey, we're starting phase two talks right away with China because China wants to start phase two talks right away. That could kind of be seen as a sign that China might be thinking, hey, he's going to win re-election,
right,
so we might as well get this done. There's no point in waiting until 2020 to see if he does or doesn't win.
That makes sense. And before I let you go, too, this topic a lot of times is a little bit in the weeds. For lay people like me, I don't even get some of the topics all the time. Blackjack is too much math for me. And you're our chief economic expert here. So can you break this down a little bit for our viewers, for me in particular, just lay people who may not follow this too closely, of what this actually means for American consumers moving forward?
Well, this tariff deal directly impacts U.S. consumers. A tariff is ultimately a tax. And Republicans have criticized President Trump for using tariffs, saying, hey, that's not a Republican move. We don't tax the American people. But, of course, they've also supported this, saying, that's the only way to pressure China. So the biggest thing is that cancellation of those tariffs that was set to go into effect this weekend on Sunday, December 15th. Those tariffs were going to directly impact consumer goods, cell phones, other electronics, clothing, all of those things that we import from China, specifically those consumer goods, were going to be tariffed at a higher rate. A tariff that China has to pay to the U.S. ultimately does result in higher prices down the road for the American consumer. So if we can avoid those tariffs on those really popular consumer goods, you're not raising prices for American shoppers here at home, but you're still, pressuring China's economy by maintaining those other tariffs so you can continue having the pressure that is needed to push them to come to a phase two agreement as well.